There is a country where almost nobody is fat. Not because they go to the gym more. Not because they drink green tea all day. Not because they have some ancient secret nobody else knows about. The answer is something much simpler. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Welcome to Lost Natural Remedies, where we dig into the real reasons people stay healthy and what the modern world has quietly taken away from us. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It helps more people find this channel. Now let's get into it. About 15 years ago, an American moved from Texas to Japan. At first, something felt strange. He could not quite put his finger on it. He kept looking around, trying to figure out what was different. Then it hit him. Nobody was fat. Since 1960, the obesity rate in America has shot up from 12% to over 40% today. That means America's obesity rate is almost 10 times higher than Japan's, which sits at just 4.5%. The average American would actually be considered overweight by Japanese standards. And when that man from Texas first arrived in Japan, he did not even realize he was carrying extra weight. Because back home, he blended right in. It was only once he was surrounded by Japanese people that the difference became obvious. Here is the part that surprised him most. He was not dieting. He was not hitting the gym. He was not following any kind of meal plan. He was just eating whatever looked good. He was losing weight. So what was going on? People love to guess at Japan's big secret. Maybe it is the green tea. Maybe it is the low smoking rates. Except, Japan actually has higher smoking rates than America. About 25% of Japanese men smoke, compared to only 13% of Americans. So that is not it. Maybe it is the gym culture? Nope. Only 3.3% of people in Japan have a gym membership, while 21% of Americans do. Maybe it is the fermented soybeans at breakfast? Getting warmer, but still not the real answer. The real answer is this. The entire food environment in Japan is just different. Not slightly different, completely different, in a few very specific ways that quietly shape what people eat every single day without them even thinking about it. Let us start with breakfast. In America, fast food is everywhere. Per person, there are 15 times as many fast food restaurants in America as there are in Japan. So when an American wakes up and thinks about breakfast, the options that come to mind are things like hotcakes and sausage, egg sandwiches on processed bread, breakfast burritos loaded with cheese and sauce, or stacks of pancakes dripping in syrup. The portions are huge, the sugar content is high, and it is incredibly easy to grab all of it without thinking twice. Now in Japan, you can still find a McDonald's, but Japan's also has over 4,000 rice bowl restaurants. At a place like Yoshinoya, for the equivalent of about $4, a person can sit down to a breakfast that would look very different from what most Americans are eating. A small bowl of rice, fermented soybeans, roasted fish, a bowl of miso soup. That is a filling, real food meal, and it costs less than a fast food combo. But what if someone is in a rush and just needs to grab something quick? This is where Japan does something really interesting. In America, grabbing something fast usually means grabbing something unhealthy. Chips, candy, fried food sitting under a heat lamp, protein bar if you are lucky. American convenience stores are not exactly known for their nutrition. Japan has about 55,000 convenience stores. That works out to nearly 10 times as many convenience stores per square kilometer as America. Here is the thing. Japanese convenience stores are completely different from American ones. For around $9, a person can walk out with roasted fish, ramen-style eggs, a rice ball, roasted chicken, a fresh salad, and an unsweetened green tea. The shelves also carry things like fish with mushrooms, boiled eggs, steamed chicken with pickled vegetables, tofu noodles for people watching their calories. Even the pre-packaged meals are made with real ingredients. A busy Japanese person on a tight schedule does not have to choose between fast and healthy. They can have both at the same time. That is a huge deal. Convenience in Japan does not automatically mean junk. In America, it almost always does. Now let us talk about sugar, because this one is big. According to 2021 data, the average Japanese person eats about 17.7 kilograms of sugar per year. The average American eats 33.7 kilograms, almost double. And you can taste that difference the moment you try food from both countries side by side. When that man from Texas first arrived in Japan, he thought Japanese sweets were not sweet enough. Cakes, drinks, snacks. Everything felt underwhelming to his American taste buds. But after living there for over a decade, something shifted. When he visited America again, everything tasted overwhelmingly sweet. Too sweet, like dessert levels of sugar in things that were not even supposed to be desserts. A container of plain yogurt tasted like candy. A 2016 study backs this up. It found that after just 2 months of cutting simple sugar intake by 40%, people started rating sweet foods as 40% sweeter than before. The palate adjusts. Japanese people are not missing out on sweetness. They have simply calibrated to a lower baseline. That baseline keeps them eating less sugar without even trying. The drinks situation is just as striking. At a McDonald's in Japan, the large soda cup is actually smaller than the small soda cup in America. Read that again. The Japanese large is smaller than the American small, and the American large is about twice the size of the Japanese large. Standard milk cartons in Japan are tiny by American comparison. There are even drinks sold in Japan with the selling point that they are small. Sized so a person can actually finish them without feeling like they overdid it. Japanese people also just do not drink that much soda to begin with. The average person in Japan drinks about 30 liters of soda per year. The average American drinks 154 liters, 5 times as much. If you sit down at a restaurant in Japan and look around, probably fewer than 10% of the people at the tables are drinking soda. Most people are drinking water or unsweetened tea. And speaking of tea, Japan has more vending machines per person than any other country on Earth. Around 4 million of them, which works out to roughly 1 for every 30 people. But these are not just soda machines. A typical Japanese vending machine might carry 5 different types of unsweetened tea, plain water, black coffee alongside the occasional sweet drink. Options are everywhere, and they are not all trying to give a person a sugar rush. Here is something that does not get talked about nearly enough when people discuss Japan's health. School lunch. In American schools, the move to hand-feeding responsibilities over to private, for-profit companies happened around 1970. Since then, school menus have filled up with processed foods, chocolate milk, tater tots, and meals that students themselves describe as inedible. There have even been student protest movements in American high schools over how bad the food is. When cost cutting becomes the main priority, nutrition is usually the first thing to go. Japan does it completely differently. Every school has a designated nutritionist. School lunches are planned carefully and made from scratch every single day. A typical school lunch in Japan might include rice, fish or meat, pickled vegetables, and a small side of miso soup. Real food, cooked fresh, designed by someone whose actual job is to think about what kids should be eating. The result of this is not just that Japanese kids eat better at school. It is that they grow up with a completely different relationship to food. By the time a Japanese child becomes a teenager, eating real, balanced meals is just normal. It is not a health trend. It's not something they have to think about. It is simply what food looks like. And that carries into adulthood. The habits formed in those school cafeterias follow people for the rest of their lives. Let us move on to portions. This one sounds simple, but it is easy to underestimate how much it matters. In Japan, the portions at restaurants are generally just a little smaller than what most Americans are used to. Not tiny, not unreasonably small, just sized for what a normal person actually needs to feel full. There are 2 main cultural reasons for this. The first is a concept called mottainai, which roughly translates to wasteful. In Japan, wasting food is considered genuinely bad, not just a little unfortunate, but a real social issue. Children are taught from an early age that leaving food on their plate is unacceptable. There are stories of kids sitting at the lunch table long after everyone else has gone outside because they had not finished their meal yet. Some of them were in tears. But the message landed. Finish what is in front of you because throwing food away is disrespectful to the plants and animals that gave their lives to become that meal. The second reason is that it is not really a thing in Japan to box up leftovers and take them home from a restaurant. In America, restaurants have built their entire identity around enormous portions because customers associate size with value. The bigger the plate, the more a person feels like they got their money's worth. Japanese restaurants do not operate that way. They serve a portion that is meant to be finished. And because of the mottainai mindset, customers eat what is served and nothing goes to waste. Snacks follow the same logic. The individual packages are small, designed, so that a person can eat the whole thing without overdoing it. There is no giant bag of chips meant to last a whole night of television. Portion control is baked into the packaging itself. One man, who had lived in Australia for a time, came back to Japan and noticed he had put on around 12 kilograms because he was eating bad food necessarily, but because the portions around him were just bigger, and he adjusted to match. When he returned to Japan, the weight came off again. Same person, different food environment. Now let us talk about variety. The quiet reasons people end up eating junk is boredom. When healthy food is boring, people drift toward things that are more exciting, even if those things are terrible for them. Japan deals with this in a way that most countries do not. The selection of reasonably healthy, affordable, genuinely interesting food is enormous. A person can walk into a classic Japanese pub called an izakaya, planning to spend the evening drinking with friends, and still end up eating really solid food. Grilled skewers of meat and vegetables, fresh tofu dishes, fish prepared different ways, pickled things, simmered things, small plates of food that actually taste like something. There are about 7,500 izakayas in Japan, more than the total number of McDonald's and Burger King locations combined. This is not a health food restaurant. It is a drinking spot. But even at a drinking spot in Japan, the food is real. That is the standard. And when the standard is that high everywhere, it becomes very hard to fall into a pattern of eating badly just because nothing better is around. Contrast that with a typical American drinking establishment. The menu is usually some combination of fried chicken, French fries, onion rings, nachos, and maybe a sad salad sitting at the bottom of the menu that nobody orders. The food at these places is not designed to nourish anyone. It is designed to keep people drinking more. Now there is one more factor worth looking at, and it has to do with the oils used to cook all this food. In Japan, people use about half the amount of seed oils that Americans use. Seed oils, also called vegetable oils, include things like canola oil, corn oil, and sunflower oil. They go through an incredibly involved industrial process to produce. High-pressure extraction, chemical solvents, washing with sodium hydroxide, bleaching, steam treatment to remove the smell. The finished product looks clean and neutral, but the process to get there is far from natural. Here is the thing about seed oils and heat. They do not hold up well when cooked, especially when used for frying. The fats in seed oils are fragile and break down easily at high temperatures, which creates compounds in the food that the body does not handle well. Saturated fats, like the kind found in beef tallow, are actually much more stable under heat. They do not break down the same way. Ironically, the fats that were pushed aside in favor of vegetable oils for decades may actually be better suited for cooking than the industrial replacements. Seed oils now make up roughly 20% of the average American's daily calories. Research is beginning to link high seed oil consumption to inflammation and metabolic problems. Japan's lower intake of these oils is likely one more quiet factor, keeping the population thinner and healthier on average. So let us bring this all together. What is Japan's big secret? It is not a secret. It is an environment. Japan built a food environment where the default choice, the easy choice, the cheap choice, the fast choice, is usually a reasonably healthy one. Nobody has to be disciplined. Nobody has to research macros or count calories or spend a lot of money on organic produce. A person just has to eat what is around them. And what is around them in Japan tends to be real food in reasonable portions, with a lot of variety, without a ton of added sugar, cooked in oils that are not quietly destroying the body from the inside. America built a different kind of food environment. One where the easy choice is almost always the bad one. Where fast means fried. Where cheap means processed. Where big portions signal good value. Where sweet means a product is enjoyable. The individual people living in that environment are not failing. The environment itself is failing them. The man who moved from Texas to Japan 15 years ago did not change his mindset. He did not go on a diet. He did not start exercising more. He simply stepped into a different food environment. And his body responded accordingly. That is the lesson. Secret is not a food. It is not a supplement. It is not a ritual. It is simply what surrounds a person every single day, and whether that environment makes it easy or hard to eat like a human being. If you want to feel different, start looking at what your environment is nudging you toward. Look at what is easy to grab, what is cheap and fast near you, what the default option is when you are hungry and tired and do not want to think about it. That is where the real battle is being fought. Not in, not in motivation, but in the everyday options quietly shaping every meal. This video if it made you think. Subscribe to Lost Natural Remedies so you do not miss what is coming next. Until then, grow something, eat something real.